HOA Karen gave herself the authority to forbid me from having a dog, so I made her absolutely obsessed with my cats. If dogs aren't allowed, I wonder how 50 stray cats will change the situation. Have you ever been treated unfairly by an HOA or any unreasonable rules? Please share your thoughts below. I've lived with Rocky, the dog I adopted while serving in the military for 11 years. We've overcome so many difficulties, from intense battles on the battlefield to long, lonely nights. Rocky was always by my side, the only loyal friend in my life. Every morning, I would wake up to his wagging tail, as if we had an unbreakable bond. He is family, the only comfort I have. But then everything changed when I moved to this neighborhood. A notice from the HOA, Homeowners Association, appeared on my door. I read it several times, unable to believe my eyes. No dogs allowed in the neighborhood in order to maintain a peaceful living environment. Anyone keeping a dog will be fined and forced to remove the dog from the premises. Each word felt like a knife cutting deep into my heart. Rocky, my beloved dog, now had to leave me because of an unreasonable rule. How could this happen? I whispered, angrily tearing up the notice. But what made me even more furious was the clear injustice from Karen, the HOA president. Karen was someone I absolutely hated. She lived right next door, and she was the one who made this decision. I knew well that she didn't care about a peaceful living environment. She was just abusing her power. I decided to confront Karen. Maris, what is this? How can I just send Rocky away like this? I tried to stay calm, but my anger was hard to conceal. Oh, Daniel. Karen's voice sounded deep and full of arrogance. I've already told you, this is the HO's decision, and we've discussed it thoroughly. Dogs cause noise and disrupt the peace of the neighborhood. If you don't comply, there will be a heavy fine. Anyone keeping a dog will be fined and forced to remove the dog. I won't accept this. Rocky doesn't bother anyone. How can they treat dogs like enemies? I couldn't contain my rage. What about your cats? What do they do? Have you ever noticed them? Karen replied without hesitation, her voice indifferent. Cats are not the issue, Daniel. They don't make noise. And I have the right to keep cats, don't I? It felt like I was hitting a wall of indifference. No one listened. No one understood. My anger boiled over. I couldn't accept this injustice. But Karen won. The HOA won. After that call, I filed a complaint, trying to fight back, but the HOA ignored everything, not even bothering to respond. Every time I looked at Rocky, I could only silently pet him, unable to stop thinking about the fact that I was soon to be separated from my loyal friend. The next day, I made the final decision, painful but with no other choice. My brother, who lived far away, agreed to adopt Rocky. I'll take good care of him, Daniel. Don't worry, he said as he embraced Rocky. I sat by the window, watching my brother leave with Rocky, my heart shattered. This was one of the most painful moments of my life. The poor dog, he didn't understand why I had to be separated from him. Everything seemed to collapse around me. And then, as I looked through the window, I saw Karen's cats jumping over the fence, running all over the neighborhood. They clawed at my flower garden, destroying the rose bushes I had taken care of for years, even making a mess of other people's yards. One cat jumped onto Mr. John's car roof, causing him to yell so loudly that the whole neighborhood took notice. I watched that scene, and my heart suddenly turned cold. If teacher has no rule about the number of cats, then I'll keep cats. Lots of cats. 50 cats. I went to a cat rescue center where abandoned cats were waiting for a home. I looked at the small, weak cats, their eyes shining brightly as if begging to be loved. Hello, I want to adopt them all, I said, my voice firm. The woman managing the center looked at me in surprise. All of them? We only have a few, but are you sure you can take care of them? It's okay. I will handle everything. As long as I can make this neighborhood a little livelier, I'll do whatever it takes. And so, I brought home 50 cats. They weren't fancy cats, but stray ones, abandoned, yet they gave me a strange sense of fulfillment. I felt like I was doing something truly special. When I brought them home, the neighborhood buzzed. Everyone knew that unbelievable things were going to happen in this neighborhood. A week later, as my cats began to adjust to their new neighborhood, strange things began to happen. The cats didn't just run around the yard or cling to the fence like harmless animals. They began climbing Karen's fence, taking over the land she proudly claimed as her own. The constant meow meow echoed through the air, disrupting the peace of the whole neighborhood. One small, fluffy cat slowly stepped into Karen's yard, a place she had protected like a fortress. Then, a group of other cats followed, making a nest right in her flower garden, causing chaos everywhere. Look, Karen, I whispered to myself, smiling faintly. This is what you chose. Karen came out of the house, her eyes wide, glaring with fury as she saw the scene before her. Daniel, she screamed, trying to chase the cats out of the yard. What is this joke? You can't do this. It's just cats, Maris, I replied calmly. They're harmless, just like you said. And I think you forgot something. The HOA doesn't have any rules about the number of cats. She stared at me, speechless, while the cats continued to roam freely as though they were the true owners of the neighborhood. The scene created a stir in the neighborhood. Some neighbors started sneaking more cats to my house. My cats not only took over Karen's yard, but they began spreading throughout the whole neighborhood. Some people quietly peered out from their windows, while others stared in fear, as if witnessing something unbelievable. As Karen saw the situation getting worse, she turned back to the HOA, seeking help. But it seemed everyone in the HOA hesitated. Suddenly, Mr. John, a member of the HOA who I knew well, stood up. He had been a victim of Karen's oppression for a long time. Now, he stood with me. That's right, Maris, Mr. John said, his voice filled with anger and determination. It's not just you who gets to do whatever you want. If he can have cats, you have no right to stop him. Karen looked at Mr. John, her eyes starting to show signs of fear. His words had hit her weak spot. Though she tried to resist, the support from Mr. John made Karen uneasy. For the first time, she felt her power starting to slip away. The entire HOA was now in turmoil, unsure of what to do. Those who had stood by Karen were now starting to hesitate, unwilling to speak up. This sudden shift made Karen feel like she was no longer the queen of the neighborhood. As days went by, my cats continued to take over Karen's yard, leaving her increasingly desperate. Every morning, my cats would arrive in droves, climbing the fence, scratching the stone benches, and some even entering her flower garden to play. Karen's yard now resembled a territory of the cats, where they roamed freely without any restrictions. I continued to sit inside the house, occasionally looking out the window, seeing her standing in the yard, furious, holding a stick, trying to chase the cats away. Go away, get out, she screamed, her voice cold, but the cats paid no attention. They continued to play, as if this was their kingdom. Karen turned and went back inside, her face now filled with frustration. What is this, Daniel? She asked, her voice full of fury as she saw me standing at the door, eyes focused on the area she was angry about because of the cats. You can't do this. They made me get rid of my dog, and now you're letting cats into my yard. I calmly responded, Maris, I'm following the rules of the HOA. You are too, right? If you can keep cats without any issue, then I have the right to do the same. This is our neighborhood, and I won't let you continue imposing unreasonable rules. The cats continued to play, completely ignoring Karen's anger. I could see her trembling because my words had started to touch her pride. She had thought she could impose everything on this neighborhood without any resistance. But I had changed everything. In the following days, Karen couldn't take it anymore. My cats not only caused a ruckus in her yard, but also spread throughout the whole neighborhood, making her feel completely out of control. She began to worry about her reputation in the HOA and the neighborhood. Finally, unable to endure it any longer, Karen introduced a new rule: no cats allowed in the neighborhood. Although the opposition from the residents had been clear for a while, Karen's actions had now gone too far. The neighborhood residents could no longer silently watch her behave so dictatorially. Whispers began to spread. She definitely doesn't have any reason to impose this new rule, one neighbor said. Is she seriously making a law just because of Daniel's cats? Another added, she's so authoritarian, just like a dictator. Still, Karen stuck to her position. She claimed her actions were to protect order and tranquility for the neighborhood, but the residents no longer believed her justifications. The previous HOA meetings might have passed easily, but this time, no one would accept Karen's authoritarianism. The HOA meeting took place on a weekend afternoon. I was there, but it wasn't just me. Many other residents attended as well. The atmosphere in the hall became tense as soon as Karen walked in, her face still smug. But I could tell she was very worried. Whispers echoed from all sides of the room. Mrs. Maris, you need to answer for your decisions. Mr. John, who had supported me from the start, spoke up. You have abused your power and not only made the neighborhood tense, but you've also imposed unreasonable rules on us. Another member of the HOA joined in. We can't let this situation continue. The way you've made decisions without consulting the residents is unacceptable. Karen looked around, seeing the growing support for me from the neighborhood residents. She couldn't deny that she had been wrong, but she still tried to resist. I'm only doing this for the benefit of the community. Karen justified herself, but her voice began to weaken, no longer as determined as before. A neighbor stood up and immediately retorted, the benefit of the community? If you really cared about the community, you wouldn't impose rules without asking for our opinions. Banning dogs, then banning cats, only makes people feel oppressed, like they don't have the freedom to live in their own neighborhood. At this point, I stood up, keeping my eyes on Kara. All I want, Maris, is fairness. How have you treated me and the other residents? What you're doing is to protect your personal interests, not the common good. You need to take responsibility for these mistakes. Karen stood silent, unsure of what to say. The feeling of defeat was clearly visible on her face. Finally, a member of the HOA stood up and proposed, given all the mismanagement and the imposition of unreasonable rules, we demand that you admit your mistakes and step down. Karen couldn't argue. She lowered her head, looked around the room, and then sighed softly. She knew her time had come to an end. Facing a community that refused to be subdued, she had to accept the truth. A silence enveloped the room for a few seconds, before a round of applause broke out from a corner of the room. Then, everyone joined in, clapping to show their support. A battle I thought I had lost had, in the end, become a victory. I stood there, feeling like I had won not just because of the cats, but for everything I had fought for to protect fairness. I couldn't bring Rocky back, but I had made the HOA lose its absolute power. Karen's power, the HOA's power, had been defeated. The neighborhood could now live in freedom, with rules that no longer oppressed or constrained us. The final scene was strange. Karen stood at the end of the street, looking at me, her eyes filled with anger and bitterness. She didn't say anything, just stood there, staring at the neighborhood like a defeated person. I sat on the porch, surrounded by the cats, looking at the peaceful streets of the neighborhood. I suddenly realized that the greatest lesson from this story was, when faced with injustice, don't be afraid to fight back. Use the law to protect yourself. The important thing is that this lesson is not limited to battles with the HOA. In reality, it's not just the HOA, but countless other management systems can abuse power, causing injustice to us. They could be organizations, agencies, or even individuals with authority. If we don't stand up, if we don't dare to face the injustice, then we will be the ones who suffer, oppressed with no one to defend us. Looking back, I see that this battle didn't just help me protect Rocky, but also helped me reclaim fairness for myself and those around me. When everyone in the neighborhood began to realize that we don't have to blindly endure injustice, but can stand up and demand change, I felt like I had truly changed this neighborhood. Daniel, did you do the right thing? A question I heard from a few neighbors as they came to talk to me after the event. Do you think this was the best way to confront Karen? I looked at them and smiled. What's right isn't doing what others tell you, but doing what you feel is fair. I didn't want my neighborhood to become a place where everyone has to live under the unreasonable control of anyone. I didn't do this for me, I did it for all of us. The neighbors looked at each other, some nodding. The sense of freedom and fairness within them seemed to be awakened. In the end, we all realize that there's nothing to fear when we stand firm and fight for what we deserve. And I'd like to know your opinion. Do you think I did the right thing? If you were me, what would you have done in this situation? Leave a comment below this video, like if you find this story meaningful, and don't forget to subscribe to the Crazy Neighbor Drama channel to follow more interesting and exciting stories.